In this lesson we're going to look at recreating the harp for La La La. The harp is probably the more complex part that we've done so far in terms of notation. The actual sequencing of the part wasn't that complex, but the actual notation, for those that aren't used to writing in notation or playing in notation, you're going to find this a little bit tricky. So I'm just going to do a little introduction into kind of what to expect when you're inputting these notes. So here's the harp part here on the score. The first thing you're going to notice is the key signature. Okay, the key of this piece is F sharp minor. Okay, the relative major is A major. A major and F minor both have 3 sharps. So those sharps are C sharp, G sharp and F sharp. So whenever you see a C in this score, it's actually a C sharp. Whenever you see an F, it's actually an F sharp, and whenever you see a G, it's actually a G sharp. Be very careful of that because they are all over the place and the piece is made up mostly of those notes. The rhythms for this part is also quite complex to input as well. It's based on a kind of a calypso rhythm where the beat is kind of pulling and pushing. So best way of breaking this down, as you can see in this bass line here, it's made up of beats of 3, 3 and 2. So it goes 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. So you've got that really strong pulse. This is quite a common practice in pop music, to take a calypso rhythm, because it just adds a lot of feel and or a more lively feel to the piece. If you want to hear an example of another pop song that's used this kind of calypso 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2 rhythm, have a look at Coldplay's Clocks. That's a really good example of that. Okay, so let's move over to the actual sequencer. So what does this score look like in the sequencer? And I'll try and bring up the score, and so here we go. The first note, we try and put these next to each other. So the first note here we have our C sharp, and you can see I've actually done this. If I sequence it between 16s, it actually takes up 3 squares. Okay, so when you're looking at these, if you're new to notation and you're looking at this rhythm going, oh my goodness, I don't know what to make of that. This first one, this dotted quaver, actually takes up 3 squares when you divide your bar by 16 by 16. So if you can see, all my squares here up to bar 10 make up 16. Okay, so the divisions are 16. Sorry for some of you this is a bit obvious, but just going to go over that. So this first note, this dotted quaver, is made up of 3. Okay, this one here is actually a tied semi-quaver to a quaver, so it also makes up 3. Okay, same with this one, makes up 3, and then we've got another 3 here, and then we've got 2, 2. Okay, that's probably as complex as it gets. I'll probably here as well. So here you have another tied quaver to a crotchet, and this makes up six squares. Okay, and also with this one, this also makes up 6 squares, and this one makes up 4 squares. Okay, so hopefully that kind of, if you're struggling inputting these notes, hopefully that's just giving you a little bit of a taste of how to kind of transfer this information to the score. Once again, if you don't like using the piano roll, feel free to go over and use something like noteflight.com or Sibelius or one of the other alternatives. So in the score, this is the pattern we've got. At the moment, I've got the harp all on one track. This intro part has the bass and the treble clef, so I might at some point separate them out into 2 parts if I feel it's necessary. As you go through it, the actual part for the chorus only has a treble clef, so it's not completely necessary. One other thing I found about this part is I think in the actual song this must have been a sequenced part rather than a live played in part, because when I came to input this, what I normally have to do is do a lot of velocity work and do a lot of kind of shortening the note lengths to give it more of a live feel. But when I reference it against the actual track without doing any of that kind of label work, it sounds okay. It sounds almost like the original, so I quite like that. The other thing is the instrument that I've used. It didn't take me very long to get the sound for this. I literally came over in this search box here, typed in harp, and they gave me about 4 or 5 options. The one that I finally went with was this orchestral, harp, and then it goes into harp. But feel free to play around with some of those other options. Without further ado, here is what my one sounds like. So here's the original, or here's the one on the song. Okay, and here is the one that I've just sequenced in. And as you can see, that's pretty close without doing very much to it at all. Okay, another thing that you might want to do is look at the EQ and sound effects. What I find with Logic is that when you load up one of these presets, it instantly loads up all of the sound effects for you and all the effects channels for you, and this is fine. It does make your mixing channel get quite cluttered, so you might have to come and clean this up at a later day. I mean, if you look at all my insert buses, I've got quite a few there, and I've only done a few tracks, so it's something that I probably will come back and clean up. One thing I noticed about this harp on La 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 is that there is a lot of reverb, and this particular harp comes loaded with 2 reverbs. So all I've done here is just turn the reverbs up, and it's given it that saturated sound, which is identical to song. The other thing that I've done is come into the EQ panel and just dropped about 300 hertz. What is it? Yeah, 300 hertz. I've just done a cut in the frequency, and that gives it that slightly muffled sound that you heard. You're going to want to play around with the EQ and this. Once again, this is just the initial set, but that's the way I'm hearing that at the moment. And as I add more instruments, maybe I'll change it and probably come back and edit it, and that's fine. But that's my initial setup. As far as the panning and the levels go, I've dropped the level slightly, and I've left the panning in the center. That's definitely the way it is for the intro, but that might change when it comes in for the chorus, because the way these things work. At the moment, the intro, it's kind of a lead part. Because there's no vocals happening, it's kind of a lead part. So you tend to find that all your lead parts go in the center. However, when it gets to the chorus, you do have the lovely vocals. So if you left it in the center here, you're going to find that your vocal starts to get drowned out a little bit. So you're going to want to kind of probably automate the panning when it gets there. I'm not 100% sure on what it is yet. I think it's slightly over to the right, but I'll need to do a bit more investigation, just see where I'm at with that. There's only one more part that I want to go for. Oh, I'll show you this screenshot as well, just so you know what that one looks like. This is the chorus one, and that's a repeated section. So here's what the chorus one looks like. I will include all these screenshots in the lesson, so if you're thinking, actually, I just want to input it from Discord, please feel free. But remember, check the notes for yourself as well. Make sure they sound right. You will lose 8, or you could lose up to 8 marks if you don't get this note input right. That's what I was saying to you earlier about the sharps. If you accidentally put a C in rather than a C sharp, or an F in rather than F sharp, or a G in rather than a G sharp, you're going to instantly lose a whole bunch of marks, because the main focus of this particular task is knowing that you understand rhythm and knowing that you understand pitch, and you can identify these things, as well as obviously putting the recreation so it all sounds exactly the same. So we've talked about making sure you got a lovely coat of reverb. You dropped a little bit of the EQ around 300 hertz, panning center, but when you get to the chorus part, it probably does move over slightly to the right. It's dropped slightly in the volume, but we will readjust that once we start getting more instruments involved. And then finally, you've got this arpeggiated note at the end of this set of notes. Okay, so on the score, that is written. Let me just find it. There it is. So the arpeggio is an upward arpeggio, as indicated by that arrow, and that's how it's indicated on the score. How I've written it here is just this kind of. Let me just zoom in so you can see that a little bit better. Okay, so there's my arpeggio there, and I've just kind of staggered these notes so you get that upward feel, and then I've dropped them a little bit early. Okay, so let's just have a listen to that in its entirety, and then I'll let you guys crack on so you can have a go.